August 1st at 7 p.m. I ask the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Joe Edmond. Jason Whiteman. Ron Haza. Here. Greg Michelle.
Here.
Mike McLaughlin.
Here.
Richard Hawk.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Present. Mario
Rios.
Here.
And we also have with us this evening City Administrator Rick Schroeder, Assistant to the City Administrator Susan Darst, and welcome, Susan. We also have Bert Buys from Council, and if anybody else from Council shows up, we will make note of that as well. We'll move to item, and there he is, Alex Blue. Item 3 this evening is a public hearing to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request by Peterson Burge Enterprises for approval of a specific City Council approved use permit for a restaurant with drive-through on property zoned overlay district, that's B3 overlay district, and located on 0.865 acre tract of land described as Lot 4, Block 2, Bandera Oaks subdivision, generally located near the intersections of Bandera Road and Cedar Trail, and formerly addressed as or near 12492 Bandera Road. The public hearing is an opportunity for folks to comment on this. General rules are that you're permitted 3 minutes to share your views. It's not an opportunity for discussion with the commission, but to tell us what is on your mind regarding this issue. So I will open the public hearing. It is 7:02. And I will ask, is it Susan Spitzer? Were you here for this particular item?
I'm here basically to hear everything that's being said.
Okay, do you wish to speak to us to share your views on it, or do you here, as you say, just to learn and understand about it?
Right. I
Okay.
have the property facts to this
Okay.
property, so
All right. Is there anyone else here this evening who would like to speak to this issue as part of the public hearing? Okay, we will close the public hearing without any speakers at 7:03. We'll move to citizens to be heard. I don't believe, Rick, we had anyone else sign up. And move on to our next item, which is discussion and action on the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 6, 2017. If you've had a chance to review the minutes, please call to our attention if you notice any corrections or edits that need to be made. Or we can have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jason? Motion is to approve the minutes as submitted of the June 6th meeting. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, bear with us a moment here. All right, item 6 this evening is discussion and action on a request by Peterson Burge Enterprises for approval of a specific City Council approved use permit for a restaurant with drive-through on property zoned overlay district, B3 overlay district, and located on a 0.865 acre tract of land. And this is the property that is at or near 12492 Bandera Road. Ask either the city administrator or assistant to the city administrator if they'd care to present the item. And do we have a representative here? If we, or just wait a little bit, sure there'll be questions, so. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Chair. We did review this item, and I want to draw your attention to a few specific portions of that. As you may well know, this proposed drive-through facility or restaurant with drive-through facility is adjacent to the wash tub or the previously approved wash tub facility that's going in at that property. in accordance with the overlay district zoning requirements, it does authorize a restaurant with drive-through facility, but you have to hold public hearings on a restaurant with drive-through facility, and you have to have an affirmative vote of the commission and city council to authorize the special use permit for that property. I do want to reiterate that market conditions cannot be a factor when granting or denying zoning variances. The commission must determine if the requested zoning for the specific city council approval use permit is compatible with the surrounding land uses, and those factors that you are able to consider would be, does the requested zoning comply with the comprehensive comprehensive plan or master plan? What are the surrounding zoning districts and land uses? What are the infrastructure impacts, if any? What is the intensity to use on the size and location of the parcel, and is the requested use reasonable? Upon looking at this, we are looking at this in comparison to the approvals that were given for the wash tub car wash facility next door. From my perspective, it is somewhat difficult to allow a car wash facility that operates essentially as a drive-through and disapprove this specific use permit for a restaurant with a drive-through. With that, we are requesting, or we are recommending that the commission, and we will be recommending that city council approve the specific city council approved use permit. The other thing I will say is this is very similar to the wash tub in the sense that this is fronting on Bandera Road, which is a significant distance away from the residents that are in Cedar Springs that would abut this property. We do not know yet what will go on those individual lots. If anything, I assume there will be something, but we don't know yet what will go on those lots. So from our perspective, from a staff perspective, we are going to be looking more intently at how they're protecting the abutting property owners for those lots that are closer to the rear of the entire development than we would necessarily for these lots that are fronting Bandera Road and are along a major highway. And with that, I'll yield back to the chair.
Can you, maybe to aid in the discussion, flip ahead to the map showing the property, the site plan showing its location, so everyone is clear on where we're talking about?
This is the site plan here. Essentially, you have Bandera Road along this way. This is that one entrance into the common development here. And if you recall, prior y'all had discussions about this ingress, egress, or driveway going into a wash tub facility that's essentially in this area right here. There is another road that goes back here that will service, it's my understanding, the wash tub facility, but also connections to the rear here where there is a detention facility so that we can so the property owner can maintain that common detention facility.
Okay. So this would be the appropriate time for discussion and questions from the commission. We do have representatives of the applicant here tonight who can help us with responses. I'll open it up. Ron.
Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned about the entrance to the wash tub through the parking lot here and cars backing up into it. It seems like it could be a major traffic issue there and safety.
So I guess the question becomes, remind us, Rick, and why don't we ask the applicant to come on up? If you tell us your name and business address, and then we can.
My name is Charles Pope. My office is 221 West Rhapsody in San Antonio.
Great. So
I
is
have to
that the only ingress, egress for both facilities? both
Yes,
businesses?
I know the architect that did the wash tub. He's a good guy. It's me. The way the wash tub works, they'll load in the front, and there's a huge field of cars.
Right.
And it loads the car wash from the back. So that queue line would be circulating that site much better. It'll go through there. And I moved the Taco Bell back another 20 feet to keep that congestion down. And you'll see that 61-foot dimension, I striped it with paint.
Okay.
So if it's a normal day, you're going to go down correctly and go through. But if you have to cut away from the traffic, you can.
What's the dimension from the front curb of the restaurant to the end of the parking space?
Front curb of the just that pedestrian sidewalk area?
From the sidewalk to the end of the parking line?
I think he's
How
referring
many
to,
point- Yeah.
66 feet.
You're referring to this?
Well, the actual driving area, which would be,
I always do 26 feet, so this area here will be 26 feet. I make the stripe 20 feet, even though 18 is the physical stripe. I really spread it out.
But you
so
still.
you're saying,
Sorry, go ahead.
so you're saying it's 26 feet
Of roadway, yes.
from the curb to the back of the parked car?
From here to here is 26 feet. This is additional 20 feet,
Okay.
and this is 20 feet.
So you're saying the driving area is going to be 46 feet?
Yes.
But to understand, say the safety concern is you would have cars backing out.
Backing into a flow of traffic is what I'm,
So you'd have cars entering off Bandera Road to either head to the wash tub or to head to, say, the drive-through of the restaurant, who will have to contend with cars backing out of parking spaces.
because the flow that the wash tub was predicting was to be quite heavy.
Yes, sir.
And our fear is if that gets backed up, now it backs up onto the highway and we have a real safety issue.
I put the parking there in the front because of parking ratios, but I can tell you that business is 65% or so drive-through. So from the Taco Bell standpoint, they probably don't need those front parks.
And to be clear here, Rick, I suppose this is a discussion we should really move into item 7, which regards the design standards as opposed to the use. So why don't we,
Okay, let's
why don't we
switch
hold on to that for right now, not as it doesn't relate directly to the use. Other comments or questions regarding the use? And I would just throw one out. Do we know yet what the anticipated hours of operation are?
Of a Taco Bell? You know, I actually don't know
To
that.
correct you, this is advertised to us as a KFC, so hopefully we're talking about
Forgive
the
me,
same business.
you're correct. It's the same client that does Taco Bell, so that's fresh on my mind. But it is a KFC. No, I don't know the working hours of a KFC.
Others with comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mike.
just maybe a rhetorical one, so that property's 108, 100-something feet, I believe, wide?
There's 103 in the front, but there's a little bit of a corner cut out of it. It's
Yeah.
probably closer to 108, yeah.
So that width, with all you want to put in there, that width is sufficient?
It works, yeah. Those, when you see 66 and 46, those are what I call Pope dimensions. They're a little extra than what codes require, just because of Suburbans and trucks and things.
Right, yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. You've got that turn lane there and everything, and I
You
was
can
just
see I
wondering,
also
'cause to
have
me-
the dash lines, that's fire truck turning lane access to make sure all the circulation works for a fire truck as well.
Yeah, just overall, I was looking at it, it looks like it's pretty small for,
We shoehorned it. Got it to work.
Rick, if you advance down one page where we see this site within the large development, the wash tub is to the, what is that, the east,
would be to the right of this
right?
development here.
On the other side is, at this moment, nothing, correct?
Over here, that's
Yeah.
nothing.
Okay. And the rear developments there, I guess, the rear lots that you were referencing, they're not
There's a-
showing, are they part of
Page
that?
1 shows the plat.
They're not, yeah, there's a plat.
Oh, the
included.
plat, that's right.
And actually, that's under item number 7.
Yeah, it's in the next one, just to see it, yeah. Okay.
So Rick, it appears that we actually have 2 lots that would buffer this lot from the adjoining properties of Cedar Springs, if I'm looking at the plat correctly.
There is, well, there's actually, it depends on how you define 2 lots. If you go to that, let me just move it here.
We have a portion of Lot 6,
You actually-
which is kind of a regular, and then you've got the lot that has the environmental feature and the retention pond.
Yeah, this, if you look at the screen, this is the lot we're referring to. This is the drive aisle. There is this lot that comes back here. There's also this feature that's required by TCEQ because of a cave on the site, and then this lot here is the detention area.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and that distance looks to be about 752 feet.
From this particular
Yeah, from the
site,
back
yeah.
of the lot
back of the
to
KFC.
the back of the corner. It's a little off because of the angle, but
Remember, there is a road that is going to go back there, correct?
To service the lots to the rear, yes.
Right. Unless there are additional questions, we can have a motion. If you are inclined to make a motion, please recall this is a recommendation item to council.
Chairman,
Yes,
I will make a motion to recommend approval of the request by Peterson Burge Enterprises for specific city council approved use permit for a restaurant with drive-through on property zone overlay district B3, located near 12492 Bandera Road.
is there a second?
I'll second.
So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by Peterson Burge Enterprises for the specific city council approved use permit and the B3 overlay district for this property at 12492 for use of a drive-through, restaurant with a drive-through. Is there discussion of the item, Jeff?
I just, I don't feel like we need another chicken place here in Helotes, right next, so close to the other ones, but I don't think you can deny on that alone. Also, I think we need to address more issues in item 7.
Mike, any comment?
My only concern is, like I was saying earlier, you mentioned you had to shoehorn it in there. That kind of goes with just looking at it. To me, it looks like things are shoehorned in there. It's a small lot. Obviously, he's making it work. But other than that, that is my concern, that it looks a little bit tight for what he wants to use it for.
Others with comment? So the motion is to recommend approval to council of the request by Peterson Burge Enterprises for a specific city council approved use permit for a restaurant with drive-through on property in the B3 overlay district at 12492 Bandera Road. All in favor of the item, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. One opposed. Motion is approved. So this item goes to city council on
August 8th. August 10th, excuse me.
10th, August 10th. So it'll be back up there.
Chair, did you say there was one opposed?
I did.
Yeah.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, right?
And who was the opposed?
Mr. McLaughlin. Okay, item 7 tonight is discussion and action on a request by Charles William Pope and Associates for approval of a conceptual design plan for a restaurant on .865 acre tract of land, which is at or near 12492 Bandera Road, including but not limited to site plan, building design, exterior lighting, signage. Again, I turn it over to the city administrator for any introductory remarks.
Thank you, Chair. We did review this item, and our conclusions are on the dais for y'all to review along with me. The applicant submitted these, to my understanding, on July 24th, and I wish we would have had some additional time to actually go through these together, because the applicant is not necessarily going to like my remarks on the submittal tonight. But We believe that the proposed site plan conforms to the code. I know that Chairman or Commissioner McLaughlin has some concerns with that, but we do believe that it complies with the Code of Ordinances. We are recommending, however, on the building design, that the commission do one of two things. The first one would be to deny the proposed building design, and the second would be to postpone this item until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the commission on September 5th, 2017. The reason for that request is the building design, in our opinion, does not conform to the design standards contained within Chapter 98, Article 9, which is architecture review by the P&Z Commission. Specifically, our concerns include the unusual and modern lighting on the building's parapet walls. It seems to have a significant number of lights that frankly look a little bit too modern in our opinion, but also are going to wash the entire facade with light, it appears. That is a secondary concern to the second and third point, which is the lack of hill country building materials and masonry. And probably the most dramatic is the red, white, and black color scheme that squarely does not fit within, in our opinion, the city of Helotes. I do understand that the applicant is dealing with norms that are probably nationwide when it comes to KFC, but we just do not feel like this building in its present state complies. With regard to exterior lighting, the proposed LED area lights, they are sharp cutoff or full cutoff, and they do not allow uplighting. Consequently, the proposed fixtures do comply with the Code of Ordinances. And I was unclear as to whether the fixtures are only on the building or whether they are within the parking area as well. I didn't see a photometric design for the parking area. So I am under the assumption that maybe they are only, I see them on Plan Sheet 2, covering the outside of the facility, but I don't know if that is what Mr. Pope is actually including in the way of cut sheets. Those cut sheets for the LED area lights, which are LSI slice medium, they are full cutoff. They do comply with our ordinance, but if they're on the building and also around the parking lot, to me, it's personally just too much. And I believe that there's some wiggle room within the design standards for y'all to look at that. The third and final component would be the signage. This, just like the red, white, and black color scheme, the wall signage, per code, we are able to authorize 1 square foot per linear foot of building with a maximum of 100 square feet. And the number of wall signs on a building are a maximum of 2, 1 per pedestrian way. The proposed building, it appears, is 28 feet on the front and the rear by 78 feet 7 inches on the left and right. Collectively, if you look at the front, rear, left, and right and add up the signage that is proposed, the front would be 97.88 square feet. The way I'm calculating it, the rear is unknown because I did not have dimensions on the mechanical screening in the back that has the head of Colonel Sanders and some other wording on there. The right of the building is, to my calculation, 71.86 square feet. That does not include the arrow. It doesn't include the arrow, which is a sign and is lit because it didn't have enough dimensions on it for me to feel comfortable making a square footage assumption. The left side of the building is 35.25 square feet. So the total square footage that I could calculate without the arrow and the rear signage is already at 205 square feet. And the allowable square footage, if you take the front and the side, would be approximately 106.58 square feet.
Can I interject one question, Rick? I understand you're saying you didn't have the square footage on the rear, but does the staff consider that image on the rear screen to be a sign?
We're considering anything with images or words to be a sign.
Okay.
The proposed, now, I'm not including what could be on the windows or things
I
like
understand.
that. There, we have another portion of the code
I
for that.
understand.
Again, the proposed wall signage includes 3 commercial signs on the front elevation, that includes the arrow, 2 signs on the right side, 2 signs on the left side, and 1 sign on the rear elevation. And so if I'm correct, the proposed design exceeds the maximum allowable wall signage by 6 signs. In addition, there is menu board signage. Menu board signage actually isn't a problem. The maximum total size can be no larger than 60 square feet. The height can't be higher than 8 feet. And you can have up to 2 menu signs per restaurant. And the way I'm looking at the calculations, it is in compliance with Chapter 66, Section 66-52B. There was no, and I was surprised on this, there was no monument signage. Oh, let me go back. They're included within the proposed menu sign. There is what they're calling the clearance bar with shroud. That also includes real meals to go at the top of it. We would recommend removing the words real meals to go above the clearance bar and making the color scheme of the shroud and the clearance bar more in line with the Hill Country aesthetic and what we hope will be the rest of the building. On the front of Mr. Pope's submittal, he does state that a pole sign, a proposed location for a pole sign is shown, but not included as a part of this presentation. When I was going through here, I couldn't actually see where that was proposed to be located. Maybe it's on here, but as you know, we do not allow pole signs, and I did not see any monument signage included within the packet, which is typically what we see on these types of developments. So, in my opinion, there are some pretty considerable changes that need to be made to this packet, and I think that the applicant and perhaps the commission would be better served, in my opinion, if we postpone this to the next regularly scheduled meeting in September, but that, of course, is up to the commission and the applicant himself.
Okay. Mr. Pope, why don't we give you a chance to address some of that, and then we'll offer
Well-
some questions and thoughts from up here.
Just, if it's possible to get direction to go back to the client with at today's meeting, when this happens like this, and when it's a franchise, and the red color, for example, if that's kind of a sticking point, I need to report back so that they can decide if they proceed or don't proceed. The goal for KFC was to sell chicken before the year ends. So as we postpone to September, we don't meet that goal. It's not the end of the world. It's just business. But my point is, if there's direction and some points to give and take today, and I go back and get the approvals and maybe report back to you, hey, the owner agreed with what you're doing without a fight, that would be my preference. But if you believe in what you've said, that all of these things are no-goes, period, then I don't want to waste your time. So if we can work with some of these points today and have a good middle of the road to go from, I think I can.
That's clearly up to the commission.
Yeah, we'll decide that up here, but let me ask you this, when either you or the applicant, in working to develop this, were either of you aware of the city's design standards?
Well, I've done several things in Helotes. I did the Taco Bell here, forgive me for keep saying that originally, and I've done dentist office, and I've done some other things. So yes, we're aware. The hang up, what we did when we presented this, if you look at the 3D, the KFC has brick. And one of the attempts that I did at trying to make kind of something to work in Helotes is it took a while, but I got corporate KFC to agree to stone. And rather than limestone or a lighter color stone, the design that they have is a dark gray brick, almost, I guess, chocolate color brick. And so if I could figure out a way to make stone work and make it a dark stone, that was a little bit of a back and forth, but I got them to okay that. So this was an attempt at going forward with Helotes. The lighting on the building, I can understand, and maybe I can see some compromises where I can go back to corporate KFC and say, you just can't have lights on this building shining on it. That was a big no. But the color, I can see where their whole image and design moving forward is this, all over the country. So like you pointed out, that's a tough thing to just make go away. So the stone was an attempt to make it work. The lighting, I can understand working on that with you. And for signage, we do have a representative here that would help talk through that too, so we can get through those hurdles too. I get, signage is signage. We can work around that. As architects, I don't want to skip through that. So,
Let me open it up to questions or comments from the commission, the commissioners at this point. Jeff? Oh, sorry, they're about to say something.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
Marvin.
make a comment. I think that, that this is a good organization, Kentucky Fried Chicken, yes. But at the same time, this is Helotes, and we do need to comply with the rules of the city, and if we can work out an arrangement, then great, but at the same time, if it's not an arrangement that still fits with the vision and the mission of our city, then we have to sometimes cut ties. And I do believe that that there's some discrepancies that we just noticed, and I'm still thinking about the first point that our colleague mentioned earlier about the entry into the facility. I guess it really, at this point, I'm thinking in my mind, but it doesn't matter what company's there, but when are we having a share, I'm not trying to take us back, but if there's a shared entrance from Wash Tub to Kentucky Fried Chicken, I'm thinking about traffic flow as well. But I know we're talking about the aesthetics right now of this building, but you combine all of those efforts, and this just seems like a negative. And that's just my thoughts on this. But yes, I am interested in hearing if the commission would like to compromise this, but at the same time, we can't compromise Helotes.
Okay, others? Jason?
Yeah, just sticking with the aesthetic issues, I think the concept for here, and it's great branding, is to make the building look like the box that your chicken comes in. I mean, that the red and white stripe, I mean, that's kind of, it's a very engaging image, but it's very jarring to compare it to our typical design standards, and I think it's a pretty long, there's a lot of distance between, I think what the board and most citizens of Helotes would reasonably expect to get from the design standards from this building, and I appreciate the effort with the stone base, but this is it's pretty far distance in my mind to what it is. You're an architect. This kind of reminds me of Robert Venturi's duck as opposed to his decorated shed. It's trying to be an object in and of itself, and I think that's pretty far from what the design guidelines are indicating that we need to kind of stick with. I mean, I've seen KFCs in other areas that kind of take into that regional stuff. I think I may have seen one in New Mexico that had, was probably not far off of what you would expect to find under Helotes' design guidelines, but this is pretty jarring to my mind to that.
Mike?
I agree with fellow commissioners. In my mind, this reaches out and grabs you, which is what it's supposed to do. You want to do that. But the best description I think I heard was jarring so far, and it is that to me. I know it represents the brand and everything, but they can change. Others have done it in different cities, and so I know it's possible. It may not be an easy encounter on your part, granted, but the colors and then all the lighting, again, on a relatively small structure, that's just a little bit too harsh for our area, I feel. I think the chicken will sell itself. It's in a prime location. I don't know that we need that much effect to try to get the sales.
I think from the city's perspective and our perspective as the commission, we would like the businesses to fit within the city and to fit with the aesthetic of the city rather than perhaps the other way around. And what we normally would tell applicants when there's a disagreement like this is it's refer you to the design standards, but also we think it's very valuable to sit down and work with city staff discussing the various pieces that have been brought up tonight to see if there is a workaround, and recognizing that your client may or may not wish to, pursue it. And we understand that. We're
Right.
not, they have their agenda, and that's fine.
Right.
But we also have to take as our top priority the city's interests. And
Sure.
you're getting the sense here of what the perspective is. So unless others want to comment, I mean, I think there's no real point in walking through a denial, but a suggestion that this be postponed, a motion to have this postponed, so that there's time for you to talk it over both with staff, but also more importantly with your client to see how they'd want to proceed. And if you go that route, I mean, I would encourage you to convey to them that there are a number of businesses up and down the same corridor that have confronted this issue in one way or another and have managed to work it out.
Well, and
So it's not, we don't think of this as fatal.
it wasn't my intent to come and say, in your face, we're doing what we want. The reason that I presented it the way I did was because of the success with the Taco Bell. I can remember being very worried at that prototype with all those color schemes and things. And Helotes was pleased that we tried to throw stone and do some
Yeah.
things. And so the attempt is still to respect the code, but then to respect the brand. There were a number of things you listed. I would love to go away with a few wins, but if you're saying they're all no's, then I understand what you're saying when we table it.
I just think that I think that if we postpone it, Chair, and that you and I and staff have a chance to go down, we've been very successful in the past. I think we went around on that Taco Bell before we even presented it several times. And so when we did present that, it was in a color scheme that was at least amenable to the commission. I know that in the past that the commission has approved colors, for example, the AutoZone that's out, that approved the colors of that building, but limited the size of those colors so that it wasn't all-encompassing like it appears to be on this building. So I would recommend postponing, and I think that we can still bring this back and have a shot of having the commission approve it.
So the next meeting that I would be able to attend is September?
September 5th.
Okay.
It would work better for the city and for the commission to do this not piecemeal, but to be able to sort of look at the package, as it were,
Okay.
and try
The
to
only,
address it.
the only concern I have walking away that doesn't seem easy to fix, we've got the drive-through, we're okay, from what I understand today, from the previous meeting, agenda.
Having a
item.
drive-through, correct.
Having the
That's
drive-through.
right.
And then the parking up front versus, I mean, as you note, with 108 by 348 space and preserving trees in the back, this is the layout. So if you tell me walking away, this can't happen, even if I had the Helotes colors and the lighting, if that's an issue, I'm concerned.
Well, I think that's where the whole package comes
Okay.
into play.
Very good.
We've always tried to play nice in the sandbox, and if you give a little,
Gotcha,
we may give a little too, to make sure that this is a quality project for all of us.
understood.
But I would like to just say that the drive-through is not a done deal until it goes to council
Right.
on the 8th.
Right, fair enough.
The 10th.
10th.
And that
10th. I
still
keep
is
saying the eighth,
happening.
the 10th.
Thursday, the 10th.
That still is happening, because if
Just for
council
the-
were to say no to the specific use permit, if that were to happen, then this whole discussion is moot.
Agreed.
And Rick, just as an aside, it might be helpful to see, if it would be possible to see the site plan, I think both for our sake and for city's council, of the wash tub, as I think there were some questions asked about the queuing, kind of see the whole package of, if there are any concerns, from us or from city council about queuing, can we kind of say, all right, we really have, 15 or 20 cars stacked before we really run into problems. It's hard to see that from
Fair
the
enough.
material
Yeah,
presented so
and,
far.
and we're lucky he was the architect on both, so.
I can
yeah.
bring that, I can submit that as a kind of a general scheme.
I would add one other thing in discussing this with the client. We haven't really talked about the signs, but our sign ordinance is relatively restrictive. And we have a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot. And what was presented here is way over the top in terms of number and size. And so you need to sort of corral that as part of this whole discussion. I think it's perfectly doable. I think that, and especially with the monument sign out front, I think it could be quite attractive and it would work. It's just, it can't be what's here.
Fair enough.
Just to kind of second that, I think, my comment about it, looking like I think that's what the intent was, is for it to look like the chicken box, or at least graphically, and so the stripes, essentially become a sign in and of themselves, or almost a sign in and of themselves. And so it's hard to, even give it a little leeway when, the whole building is essentially acting as a giant sign. And that's kind of why I feel like we're, maybe a little bit too far here
Okay.
to just say, well, paint it tan and you're good to go. I think we're, there's a bit more
Understood.
bridge to go there.
I'd like to ask for a motion to postpone until a date specific. Again, one more time, it's the 5th, did we say?
Yes, sir.
5th. That's the day after Labor Day, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to postpone consideration of this agenda item until 5th of September.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mario. Further discussion, Mike or Mario?
No, I think we.
It's all been said.
Anyone else? Okay. The motion is to postpone until September 5th regularly scheduled meeting to consider item 7. All in favor of the motion to postpone, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion will appear again on September the 5th. Thank you, Mr. Pope. We'll look forward to seeing you again. We're going to move ahead tonight to item number 8, which is discussion and action on a preliminary and final subdivision plat establishing the True Vine Braun subdivision, being a total of 4.692 acres, establishing lots 11 through 13, Block 12, NCB 1563. And I will turn it over to the city administrator to present. And is anyone here representing if we have questions? Okay. We'll let you
Chair,
know. Go ahead.
I have very few comments on this. As you can see, the city engineer did approve or recommend approval of the preliminary and final plat for True Vine. This actually is outside the city of Helotes, within our extraterritorial jurisdiction, and so normally the Bear County would be the one handling the plats, and we would be making administrative recommendations to Bear County. The difference here is that this plat does include 2 dedications of right-of-way. They are very, I would say, small or insignificant. One is to the bottom left of the plat along Braun Road, which is .0054 acres or 236 square feet. The other dedication is on the opposite side or the opposite end of the triangle along Braun Road, and that is even smaller at 38.95 square feet. And so that is why it's on the commission and city council agendas for approval. Those dedications are required because they comply with our major thoroughfare plan that calls for certain distances along those streets.
39 feet. Excellent. Does Bear County still have to approve this?
Yes, Bear County will approve this. They wanted a signature, I believe they wanted a signature block on the plat where both you and the mayor could sign off on that dedication.
Good. Comments or questions?
What is the zoning of these? Is that
There-
been determined?
There is no zoning since it's in our extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a real quick question. Is this part of where we annexed the road, so that's why we have to do this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If there are no other questions or comments, we can have a motion on this item.
Motion to approve?
If you don't mind, read it out for us.
Yeah, where did that one go? Okay.
Number 8.
Motion to approve.
That's actually a recommend item.
Motion to recommend approval on a preliminary and final subdivision plat pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78, subdivisions, establishing the True Vine Braun subdivision being a total of 4.692 acres, establishing lots 11 through 13, Block 12 NCB 15663, as described in Volume 18157, page 88, of the real property records of Bear County, Texas.
Thanks. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Michael. Discussion. Jason? Mike?
No.
Anyone? So the motion is to recommend approval of both, of the preliminary and final subdivision plat for establishing the True Vine Bronze subdivision, total of 4.692 acres, establishing lots 11 to 13, Block 12, NCB 15663. All in favor of the motion, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And this will go to city council next Thursday evening, the 10th. Great, thank you. Number 9 this evening is discussion and action on a preliminary and final subdivision plat establishing the BBVA Compass Bank subdivision, establishing lots 1 and 2, Block 1. And I will ask the city administrator to speak to this. One of you guys might be representing that, okay. If we have questions.
This plat, or the proposed plat, is at the intersection of Hausman Road and Bandera Road. It's currently where the Compass Bank building is and where future planned development will be, again, mostly along Hausman Road, but there is a portion that fronts Bandera Road there. We did consult with TxDOT as to whether, given the Super Street concept up and down Bandera Road, additional right-of-way would be required along Bandera Road. They declined the right-of-way requirement, meaning that there is sufficient right-of-way there, but they did request 20-foot right-of-way dedication to the city of Helotes along Hausman Road, again, to accommodate the widening of Hausman from 2 to 4 lanes. There are no other comments that I have. The engineer did review this and is recommending approval of the preliminary and final plat.
Great. Do we have any comments or questions on this item?
Does this include that, that back driveway?
Can you come up to the dais, please?
Yes, sorry, come on up and give us your name and business address, please.
George Sevilla, 70 Northeast Loop 410, Suite 1100, Stantec. It does include that driveway in the back. I don't know if you guys have that copy or.
Is it pictured here? Rick, can you flip to the plot?
Way too far, sorry.
Yes. Talking about that existing driveway, I guess, around here. I don't have an aerial on me, but it would be somewhat here. Is that what you're talking about?
Is that where it is? Is it, so that's in there already?
Kind of like next to the post office?
I think so.
So the post office over here? Yeah, the back driveway that goes around to Golden Chick and,
Well, it doesn't go through anymore, does it?
And then cut it off.
Is it planned to go through or not?
up again.
Not that I am aware of. We have no direction from the developer on how they want to develop it. We just strictly trying to replat it.
Okay, other questions?
Matter of just the record keeping. So we, say we move to approve, that automatically includes the right-of-way dedication because it's on the drawing, or is that something we need to make
That
sure
is-
of?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is approved. It will be approved with the recommendation.
Yes.
Council.
Okay.
Good question.
And you have a larger copy, by the way, in front of your,
Yeah, I
on the
saw it.
dais. It's this portion if you need to see a larger.
Unless there's other questions or comments, a motion would be appropriate.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to recommend for approval.
You'd read it out for us, Mario.
Motion to approve,
Recommend.
motion to recommend
Yeah.
approval on a preliminary and final subdivision plat pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinance, Chapter 78 subdivision, establishing the BBVA Compass Bank subdivision, establishing lots 1 and 2, Block 1, and being 3.5678 acres of land out of CB 4437, consisting of Lot 3, Block 1, a replat of Wolfson subdivision, and unplatted tract of land recorded in volume 5249, page 182, official public records, Bexar County, Texas.
Great, thanks. Second, anyone?
Second.
Ron. Any discussion, Mario or Ron? Or anyone else? So the motion is to recommend approval of the preliminary and final subdivision plats, establishing the BBVA Compass Bank subdivision, establishing lots 1 and 2, block 1. All in favor of this motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved, goes to council August 10th.
August 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're up to the final two items tonight, which are both discussion items, not action items at this point in time. Item 10 is discussion of zoning regulations for mobile and temporary buildings used for non-residential purposes. And the genesis of this item goes back to our previous meeting where we had the item before us regarding a mobile home structure for the Casa Helotes property that was going to be used for it was a veterans-related office. And there was concern among a number of us up here about whether that we were had sufficient clarity in the code regarding whether we had the ability to either defer or reject a non-residential use for a mobile home. We have a mobile home district in the code. I don't believe we have an actual zoned area, is that right? But we simply don't address this issue, and to my knowledge, having done this for many years, I don't think we've ever seen this type of issue come before us before, and so I think it's one that at least bears some discussion. I don't know how common it is elsewhere in our metropolitan area, whether other codes address something like this. But the concern is that this potentially, if we see other applicants down the road requesting something similar, we might want to try to get out in front of that. So it's really just a discussion item. And Rick, I don't believe the staff has looked into this at all to this point. Is that correct?
No, other than before the item where we discussed this for the Veterans Association, we did ensure that the city attorney's office had looked at it, and yes, it was indeed the fact that we had no regulations against something like this.
Right.
For commercial. Now, residential, yes, we do, but for commercial, no. I've been thinking, I didn't know where the chair was going with this item, but we don't currently have anything on the books that would require something to be placed on a permanent foundation, whether that be pier and beam or a solid foundation. And rather than get into what is or is not a modular or a manufactured, or there's a lot of different variations out there, I just wonder if ensuring that all future construction was placed on a permanent foundation of some sort, whether that would solve this problem.
Well, that's a reasonable approach here. I mean, Ron, what do you think?
Now, if somebody showed up with a metal box and said they put it on a permanent foundation, would that sort of, could we stop that?
Design standards?
Well, the design standards would kick in at that point, and the commission had discussions about design standards at the last meeting. And, I mean, my personal opinion is I don't think it complies with our design standards, but I think the commission thought that there was a higher authority here, that being the need to help the disabled American veterans. I don't know if that's true. I'm speaking for the commission, so I apologize. So normally you would have the design standards at that point kick in to combat just a metal building be placed on a permanent foundation.
Because how I understand it right now, any commercial property, you could pull in today and ask for a metal building, a portable building.
There's nothing to prohibit it.
It's nothing prohibited at this time.
I'm unclear about the question. Are you referring to a secondary structure that would service a main
A
commercial structure?
piece of property. I show up today I come in here and ask to put my pre-manufactured building on site. We have nothing to stop that, right?
You have nothing to stop that other than the design standards, which would look at the aesthetics of the
Right.
building.
So if we put rock in front of it, it would be good.
Well, that's up to the commission.
Well, but to play devil's advocate, you see a lot of these, tiny house shows.
Right.
And a lot of those are built on trailers or at least trucked in on a trailer. I mean, you could very easily design a building that exactly met every last line item of our design standards, and it's still a mobile home.
Right.
Or a mobile building.
Yeah, how do you,
And so I think that, to me, that's kind of where you have to hang your hat is, does it comply with what we're trying to do otherwise? I mean, you could fly in with a helicopter. I mean, it doesn't, and drop it on a permanent foundation. It doesn't really matter how it's built or how it gets there. And kind of, not to get too much into it, but, my own personal rationale for the decision at that time was that our design standards also say, to try to match when you're doing an addition, to try to match what's going on. And it seemed like there was a good faith effort, and there was a good faith effort to try to screen the parts of the building that didn't seem like they complied, with items, the screen and the stairs and so forth, that did comply with that. And so I think when, we can try to work with people, to my mind, if we can try to work with people in that respect, it's not, it doesn't matter how it's built. to my
right,
mind.
right, just,
Right.
So your perspective would be that the flexibility, preserving the flexibility which now exists still enables one to either allow or disallow.
Yeah, but I mean, to get to the defensive point, having a couple axles and an exposed, wheels, is very much not in our design standards. I mean, that's not that 4 tires is not part of our standard of palette of materials that we allow here. And I, wholeheartedly defend that, we shouldn't let somebody just plop it down, and leave it hanging out like that. That's not what we're looking for.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
my question is, and I can't remember if we've talked about this in the past, but I know that Casa Helotes is the example, but are there other businesses in Helotes that have portable manufactured?
This is the first,
there is one. The oil change place was a modular building. But since then, they've rocked it all in.
The oil change place to the rear of Hill Country Crossing, next to Public Storage, I believe, as you're coming into town. I think there's actually more manufactured homes that have been plopped down on foundations. One of them in particular is in Old Town that I know was most likely bought off the side of 281 and put on a permanent foundation, but it does comply with our design standards. So that's where I'm hesitant to immediately reject all forms of pre-manufactured structures, because some are legitimately constructed and do look good in our environment here.
but you just said the one you were referencing was put down on a permanent foundation.
Yes, it's either pier and beam or it has a permanent or a full foundation, but it is on a
I mean,
foundation.
it seems to me that's not especially onerous to request that applicants have are establishing something permanent here. It's going to conform, it's going to look like a building. You still have your design standards. I mean, I think, Jason, your point is well taken, that you could helicopter in something that would fit. But on the other hand, I think would be justified in saying we'd like to encourage permanently, built
Structure.
structures. I don't know what else, how else to describe
If
it.
it comes in big pieces, that's fine, but a permanent structure, the axles like you talked about, that it was not just rolled in and made to look permanent, but it's really,
Yeah, and I think, I like the chairman's point that, maybe part of the soul, part of the philosophical discussion of Helotes is, kind of permanent. And, it's not just, people flitting in and out and, here today, gone tomorrow, kind of a situation where they can, business can,
up and,
hook
So
it up to
maybe
an
that would
F-350.
encourage something more long-term, somebody coming in there forces them to think long-term, not just 2 or 3 weeks or a few months or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's more of an investment.
if we were to consider this approach, Rick, what would be I don't know if I could pinpoint it now, the appropriate place of the code where we would want to insert this type of language?
It would most likely be Chapter 18, which is the building code, that identifies not only the International Building Code, but also exceptions to it, specifically for the city of Helotes. And so I would recommend, if you would like, staff can draft an ordinance relatively simply that would amend Chapter 18, and we could bring it back at the next meeting for review.
That'd be great, but do we have authority over Chapter 18?
The Planning and Zoning Commission has authority over many, many things, you have purview over a variety of many things. You may not have the authority to directly oversee and approve something, but
Right.
that doesn't stop you from recommending to council that they look at this issue. And it always helps when you provide at least in my opinion, an ordinance that's been vetted through the commission.
Sure. At some point, I presume if we did that, the city attorney would review it.
I typically have him review things right before council approves it to get it the way y'all want it, and then have him approve it or
Well,
look at it.
what's the sense of the commission? I mean, would we like to ask staff to draft something to review? I mean, we don't have to, we're just reviewing it, we don't have to actually recommend it.
I suggest yes, that we proceed with that, but at the same time, is the language going to say we prefer that we have single structures and not manufactured homes, or are we going to say we are
The
requiring?
building- From what I know about the building code, that's more of a all or nothing. There's no, we recommend in the building code, it's just, that's how it's gonna be.
But to say permanent foundation does not prevent modular, temporary type structures.
And it could be a pier as well. I mean, it doesn't have to be on a slab
Right,
necessarily, I think,
right.
but, we just don't wanna see it hauled off. And I guess just a point I would bring up, just to close the loop on this, and I'm presuming we wouldn't need to reference the design standards that are sort of endemic to that. If we're showing a trailer that is gonna be permanently installed, it also has to meet the design standards, and that, we all understand that's, ingrained in what we're reviewing anyway, so there's no additional need to add to that. I'm kind of throwing that out there as any concerns that it would sneak through, I guess.
Mr. Chairman. So the one we did approve, which was on a B4, and how to justify that one as it was on a B4, that it still looks like a metal portable building.
Well, my recollection of the discussion was, A, it was B4, B, it was somewhat hidden, shrouded, and C, as I think the city administrator said, I think the general sentiment was it was for a very worthwhile cause, and that kind of trumped the other factors, rightly or wrongly.
My recommendation would be to not discuss it and just move forward. In the sense, I'm not trying to be rude, in the sense of,
Sure.
Well, I'm just so
we,
no
we
one
we
walks in
shouldn't,
and says.
well, I'm not, if somebody walks in, I'm gonna have to answer that question, or Ernest is, and we'll just say defer to the commission on that and not
Okay.
answer any additional questions.
Well, I would just like, so for our defense, that it was approved only because it was on a B4, since we have so few B4s.
I understand that, I just don't think that there's a need for a defense.
Okay.
Now that you mentioned before, would it be worthwhile putting it in certain zones?
Well, I mean, I think the place to start is
Or just
with
start with what we've talked
with what
about.
we talked about here, and then we can consider
Okay,
location.
okay.
Well, zoning, but the building code is not, I don't think it really relates to zoning either. It's just blanket
yeah, that's
statement.
true.
And to kind of respond to that from your perspective, after that, there would not need to be a defense, because it's a new, we were presented with a new thing, we considered it, and, everybody agreed that we didn't want to do that again, and
To be clear, Rick, Chapter 18 is that the Helotes specific portion of the international business?
Chapter
code?
18 identifies what codes the city is adopting, whether it be
From the international.
Yes, but there's like 6 or 7 different types of international code series, so IRC, IBC, NEC, all these things. So we adopt them in that chapter, but we also, if we have exceptions to a particular part of those codes, then we identify what those exceptions are.
Okay.
Yeah, they're amended.
All
I
right,
read
so-
amendments all day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very common.
So we will hopefully take this up in September. Staff will prepare a exception or amendment, however you want to term it, to the code that deals with, establishes the requirement of permanent structures, permanent foundations, excuse me, for structures. Within commercial zones is what we're talking about here. Okay.
Well, actually, that amendment would not address commercial or residential. It would just say all buildings and
buildings,
structures would have to be placed on a permanent foundation. And I'm gonna have to make some changes there with the exception of portable buildings and things like that, because we do allow people to have their sheds out in their backyards, but
And there's no conflict with the zone, the residential mobile zone, residential zone that is for temporary homes, mobile homes.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
The existing zone, code that in our code, we have a mobile home district. Does that have to be carved out as well, even though we don't have a zone for that?
I do not have an answer for you at this point, sir, on that.
Okay.
I have one more thought, just put it out there. It wouldn't be a conflict either, or maybe it needs to be researched. And I'm just asking, with the schools in Helotes, if they have overcrowding and they have to bring in portable buildings temporarily for a school year or two, why they build another building?
Right.
I'm just asking.
The schools are most likely going to be exempt from that requirement. Remember, they're a government entity just like us. And if we were to require that on the schools, putting in portable buildings, I'm sure we would get a very swift letter from their attorneys. So I would not necessarily worry about the schools or any other governmental entities out there that have the same sovereign rights that we do.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, I think we're good on this one. We could move on to our final item tonight, which is discussion of municipal code of ordinances, chapter 66 signs, including but not limited to sections 43 residential subdivision entry signs and 44 banners, temporary signs, and site development signs, and tower, column, pillar, and or spire elements, either attached to or separated from proposed signage. I think we're generally familiar with the origins of this item. And we had a discussion with the city administrator 2-3 months ago now.
Yes, we did. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to kick the ball down the curb again one more time. I have received comments from the city council tangentially at one of the meetings where I received what some did or did not like or were recommending. I have not received, the mayor right now is currently reviewing the entire ordinance. I have not received his comments.
Okay.
And my hope is to include both council comments, they weren't substantial at that point, and the mayor's comments, and redline that document and bring it back to y'all for review. All of this, I can guarantee you, not only the ordinance on the foundation, but also this ordinance will come back to you September 5th, and Susan Darst will be a significant component of those ordinance revisions. Again, what we will be looking at is the entire code of ordinances. It seems every time a sign that comes up that goes to this commission but has to go to council, there are significant and also different opinions on the way that the sign ordinance does or does not read and how people follow it, things of that sort. So we will be trying to address those. But we will also be addressing residential subdivision entry signage. Typically, the height, the component of whether it is or is not attached by a common foundation to a monument sign. We will be looking at the banner ordinance. There has been some discussions from council members, not up on the dais, but in the office, about possibly loosening some restrictions on banners and loosening some restrictions on potential flags. I'm not saying the commission will agree with those. I'm just saying that those will be incorporated in there so that we can have a document that we can start with. And the other thing would be a tower, column, pillar, and or spire. The concern there is while those elements may not be considered a part of the sign, whether they are or are not attached by a common foundation, but if somebody just wanted to put a tower in the middle of a neighborhood, the concern is that without any identifying insignia or anything on that tower, that it is no longer a sign, but it's actually a structure. And so council, some council members would prefer to limit the height of those elements and define where they can or cannot be and how they can or cannot be located amidst residential subdivision entry signage. And so all of these things will be addressed in a comprehensive sign revision that we will propose to y'all on September 5th.
On the latter point regarding the detached, non-sign sign, if that's going to be addressed, is the sign code actually the correct place for it if it is not a sign but a structure or
Well,
an accessory?
that's what we're gonna have to look at. It may be actually included in the building code amendments that we bring back on the foundation, and that's why I had brought up the foundation permanence, because I knew maybe I would be able to kill two birds with one stone. So I would imagine that we would have to address it, most likely in the building code, but we could also reference it in the sign code
Yeah.
for
Yeah, you
these
reference
elements,
it, sure.
reference, chapter, what have you, so. So I apologize for not being able to get anything to y'all today. As you know, as you may know, it's right in the middle of budget season, and next week I'm presenting the budget to council, so blame them. But we will get this to y'all on September 5th.
Ron?
Another thing, you want to put statues in there?
I can put anything
Well,
in there at this
just
point that
another
y'all can-
item, just, because it's going to come up eventually. If somebody puts a statue out in front of their subdivision.
Statue of Bert.
There you go.
So, when you bring those items back, if you would make a note to include it as an action item, in case we actually can get to
Yeah.
recommend something. But it sounds like September could be a busy, if there's money left over from the budget, maybe you'll provide dinner.
Yeah, there you go.
We, actually, we can go ahead and plan for dinner now. So if y'all would, and I'm being serious, we do that for workshops. That's gonna be a long meeting, so we will go ahead and
That'd be
include
great.
that. Is there a preference?
Not chicken, please.
There pizza, sandwiches, what is the consensus so that we know?
Yeah, sure, I'm sure this body would be happy with pizza.
Yeah, that'd be
Would
fine, it'd be
be-
simple and easy.
Would be honored.
Okay. pizza.
Thank you. We've reached the end of our agenda. Do we have a motion, Ron, to go home?
Mr. Chairman, may we please go home?
Is there a second? All in favor of adjourning at 8:13, signal aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.